But the sector spotlight now shifts to IT. Yesterday, at least, the IT space was a big winner. We have Moshe Khatri, Managing Director, FinTech and Tech-Enabled Services Investment Banking at Wedbush Securities with us. We also have Ganesh Natarajan, Chairman of GTT Data Solutions, joining in. Gentlemen, great to have both of you, here with us. I think the market yesterday was taking note of the fact that there is some softness around this visa issue, and I think the clarifications are helping that this $100 fee is not going to apply, say, to student visas. It will not apply if you are changing your employer in the US or if you are renewing your existing H-1B visa. So those clarifications help to an extent. But the issue goes beyond that, perhaps. So, Moshe, if I could start with you. I mean, the issue is really about growth and whether large Indian IT services companies can really pivot in an era where, it's just hyper affinity for all things AI. How do you sum up the commentary that you've heard from the Indian companies so far and, how they will navigate the whole growth question?
Yeah, growth has been impacted by multiple factors, anywhere from the disruptive impact of Gen AI, the lack of funding for discretionary work, some competition that we're seeing from GCCs. So collectively, it's been pretty difficult. I just want to say one sentence regarding the H-1B visa program. Look, in general, the industry has been battle tested here. And a lot of those large companies have built a pretty scalable delivery, facilities or operations out of the US. So in our view, they'll be able to navigate through that. Obviously it's not 100%, but I think they're well positioned to get there. Growth is going to be challenging, at least for now. And I think the bigger issue is more about how do you position yourself to benefit from this Gen AI spending cycle. And there's a spending cycle, believe it or not. The question here is, does it impact the business? Does it cannibalize revenues, especially with some of the low-end work that gets done? I think that the verdict is yet to be made in terms of how does it impact actually the industry in general.
But what's your reading of exactly that, Moshe? I mean, a lot of Indian companies are talking about launching AI modules. Many are talking about changing the workflow systems as well internally and getting AI ready. How do you sum up some of these efforts?
I think the sector is very well embedded here. But again, the real question here is, when do you get these projects to scale? That's really the main question, and that's going to drive growth down the road. And no one really has a good answer for that. That's why we're kind of in a transitional period right now.
All right, Moshe, one more question with regard to Infosys. The promoters, they said that they're not going to be participating in the buyback. It could very well be because it's not tax efficient. But the street read it very, very positively and bid up the stock. What's your view?
Well, look, I think Infosys as a company is doing what it's supposed to do. They have two buckets of growth. One that focuses on cost cutting and running the business for their clients. That part of the business is actually growing. And then they're also repositioning the business to focus on Gen AI. So, I think management is doing exactly what it's supposed to do as we speak. And it's getting you some growth even. So it's not a bad thing.
So positive on Infosys from here on?
Yep.
All right, let's welcome Mr. Natarajan as well into the discussion. Hi, Mr. Natarajan. Good morning and good to see you in. How are you reading things with regard to the Indian companies? They seem to be turning their attention a little bit more to the AI front. How big is the opportunity and how do you think this pivot is taking place?
I think we're entering a new normal. And the discussion in the last 3 months obviously has been on the H-1Bs, etc. And hopefully, if we're entering an era of stability, I think the only category of people who need to worry are people who have maybe done their engineering in India, worked for a year. And for them, the $100,000 thing will be punitive. But apart from that, as you said, graduates, people switching from L1 to whatever. So I think all those categories are safe. Now, in that context, let's look at the market. I personally believe that in the next 2 years, you will see another big wave of growth. And that's primarily because people are moving from experimenting with point AI solutions, with Gen AI, et cetera, to much more of game-changing AI. Now, when I say game-changing AI, you are really looking at a situation where somebody will take maybe a logistics process and completely reimagine it, saying that, look, what are the AI touch points? How do I optimize the process and re-engineer it to make sure that we really get maximum advantage out of it? Now, in this context, I think the opportunity, like we saw maybe 20 years ago with Y2K, where there were these huge projects coming through, I begin to see that happen. So I think the game-changing AI, which could be multi-million-dollar projects, is one. The second, of course, I mean, you heard the TCS commentary on investing heavily in data centers. So helping our clients to really access LLMs, building small and narrow language models for enabling them to harness agentic AI, I think the canvas is really expanding. So I'm bullish. I agree with Moshe that, I mean, you can't expect any miracles in the next few quarters. But I think over the next year, year and a half, you'll see significant growth coming back to the industry.
That's good to hear, Mr. Natarajan. Morning, sir. And Infosys also spoke about this, right? They're deploying some 2,500 Gen AI projects and I think 200 agentic AI. They kind of singled out some of these numbers in these projects in their call. But if we take that longer term horizon, say over the next year and a half, as some of these projects come to fruition, what are we talking about? I mean, can some of the larger companies get back to at least high single-digit growth, if not double-digit growth?
I'm expecting, say, double-digit growth. I mean, if not in this financial year, but if you look at FY27, I think you'll begin to see companies, especially those who are nimble, who are really focused on not just generating AI, but building agentic software for large horizontal applications. I think those will go back to the 10-12% growth. I don't see any doubt about that. I mean, people are not still kind of putting their toe in the water and not jumping in and really doing or really winning large projects. They might still be struggling at the single digit, but I don't see the industry being at single digit for a very long time.
That's good to hear. That's very good to hear. And Mr. Natarajan, what will this margin, what will this transition over the next year and a half mean for margins? Some argue that the deployment of AI is going to be margin dilutive because it's all about saving costs, and then client will want those savings to be passed on.
Well, that is true, but look at it this way. I mean, one is what you're saying, which is that clients will say that, look, I mean, you yourself are going to use AI and programmers will no longer be required. That's one dimension of it. That's the supply side. But on the demand side, see, a lot of clients, I mean, this is almost like the old situation of people rushed into digital and hardly 20% of the projects were really game changing. The same thing is happening in AI. Everybody is experimenting with AI. There is AI literacy generally available, but AI mastery has not happened. And I think the opportunity for all of us who are building IT companies in this landscape is to become masters at specific processes for AI and make that happen. So in that context, when you're talking about a different language, when you're giving an AI strategy as well as full end-to-end implementation, I think price will not be the issue. So I don't see that as, for companies going back into the double-digit growth that we talked about earlier, I think margins will also be excellent because these will be really different projects if we're talking about maybe a year and a half from now.
A very good point, Mr. Natarajan. But let's wind this conversation down with Moshe's final comment. Moshe, your view on the Indian companies, you still have companies like Persistent, Coforge. They are, Coforge, they are growing at a very, very good rate in comparison to the larger cap names. How would you position yourself, if you're looking to buy tech here in India?
A couple of things about growth. Even today, you have companies that are getting you those double-digit growth rates. They are focusing on product development, ER&D. These are very, very strong growth areas, but I would say they're very niche-y, and not every company can actually get the job done. Regarding the question on margins, I would say two things. One, in order for companies to really survive and thrive in a Gen AI kind of mode, if you will, they have to do two things. One, they have to decouple revenue growth from headcount growth. So they have to go for nonlinear growth. That's number one. Number two, they'll have to focus more on outcome-based contracts. So deviate from the old model, move to the new models, and in our view, that actually will get you margin expansion in your business. And some companies are starting to do that, but again, I think we're very, very early in this phase, if you will.
Okay, all right, gentlemen, very helpful conversation. Thank you for all the context. Basically, we need to watch the space closely and see how this AI transition plays out for Indian IT services. Thank you very much for joining in.